What happens when a man mocks his loyal wife in front of others, then becomes completely helpless, only to discover the one he insulted is the only person left standing beside him? Let us find out what happened in this intriguing story. It was a sunny afternoon in Enugu city. Gozi, a respected bank manager in his early 40s, had just closed a major deal at work. He walked tall, always dressed in fine suits, and drove the latest SUV. At home, his wife, Ifunanya, had taken a career break to raise their 3 kids. Over the years, her body changed, and her once fitted gowns no longer hugged her frame the same way. Gozi noticed. And slowly, he started treating her like a shadow. That weekend, Gozi hosted a birthday party for his friend Chinedu, a fellow banker. His co-workers, friends, and even one particular guest, a young, slender lady named Mirabel, were all present. Ifunanya dressed in her favorite coral lace. She had gained weight, yes, but her face still glowed with warmth. She smiled as she helped serve drinks and pass plates of rice and chicken. Suddenly, one of the guests made a joke. Gozi, your madam is enjoying life. Gozi laughed louder than all of them and shouted, enjoying too much. Look at her, like a fat elephant walking among humans. Everyone burst into laughter, even Mirabel giggled. Ifunanya stood there, the tray in her hand shaking. Her smile died on her face. She looked straight at Gozi, tears building in her eyes. But she said nothing. She turned around slowly and walked into the house. Gozi didn't follow her. He stayed back, pouring drinks for Mirabel, whispering into her ears like nothing happened. In his mind, he had already replaced his wife. She was now just a woman he shared a house with. But what Gozi didn't know was this: life had a way of giving people mirrors. And soon, he would see his. After that humiliating party in Enugu, Ifunanya went silent, but not weak. She stopped asking Gozi where he went. She stopped waiting up for him at night. She became a background voice in her own home. But when she looked in the mirror, she saw something new: resolve. Not revenge. Not hate. Just quiet strength growing out of pain. Gozi, on the other hand, was floating. Mirabel, the young woman from the party, started visiting his office often. She wore fitted dresses, long braids, and always had her nails done. She called him baby in front of his staff. Gozi didn't hide it. He stopped sleeping at home some nights. When Ifunanya asked, he told her plainly, you brought this on yourself. Look at you. You're not the woman I married. But Ifunanya didn't shout. She didn't cry in front of him. She took care of the children. She registered at a local gym. She began attending tailoring classes near Okpara Avenue. She lost some weight, yes, but more importantly, she found her voice. Silently. The kids noticed the tension. Junior asked, Mommy, is Daddy angry with you? She knelt and held him. No, my son. Daddy is just confused. He will see clearly one day. Gozi's coworkers started whispering behind his back. Some said he was changing too fast. Others said he was chasing the kind of beauty that wouldn't last. Even Chinedu pulled him aside one day and said, Bro, don't lose a diamond because you're chasing shiny glass. That's your wife? She's gold. Gozi brushed it off. She's old news. I need someone who matches my level now. But in the silence of their master bedroom, when he walked in and saw Ifunanya folding clothes in her nightgown, calm, strong, and quiet, something in his chest twisted. He pushed the thought away. Mirabel was waiting at the hotel. Little did he know, the road he was walking was about to break beneath his feet. It was a Tuesday evening, and the Enugu skies were thick with rain. Gozi had just finished another late lunch with Mirabel at a rooftop restaurant in Independence Layout. As usual, he dropped wads of cash on the table, gave her a peck, and drove off in his SUV with his favorite song blasting through the speakers. But just before he reached the major express, something happened. A Kiki tricycle ahead of him swerved suddenly. Gozi hit the brakes too late. His SUV spun, crashed into a metal barricade, and flipped. The last thing he remembered was the sound of his own bones cracking. The next morning, he woke up in Park Lane Hospital, his body wrapped in bandages, a metal rod in one leg, neck in a brace. Mirabelle came once, just once. She stood by the door, saw him lying there helpless, face swollen, legs lifted in a sling, and she didn't even step in. Instead, she called his phone and said, "Gozi, this is too much for me. I can't do this caretaker thing. I'm not your wife. I'm sorry." Then she hung up. That was the last he ever heard from her. Ifunanya was the one who had rushed to the hospital that night, barefoot, carrying his insurance card and ID. She was the one who slept in the hard plastic chair for 3 nights, fed him with a spoon, cleaned his wounds, changed his clothes. She said nothing. Not even "I told you so." The shame nearly killed Gozi more than the accident. One night, as she helped lift him to sit upright, he grabbed her wrist. His voice cracked, "Why are you still here?" She looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, "Because when I said, in sickness and in health, I meant it. Even if you didn't." And just like that, Gozi, Enugu's flashy banker, broke. Not from the pain in his bones, but from the pain in his heart. For the first time, he wept. Not tears of injury, but tears of regret. The hospital bed became Gozi's prison for weeks. Tubes, beeping machines, and shame surrounded him. His coworkers came once or twice, took selfies, then disappeared. Even Chinedu, his oldest friend, sent just one bouquet of quick recovery flowers. The same friends who once drank from his expensive bottles now acted like he never existed. Only Ifunanya remained. She came every morning before sunrise with warm water in a flask. She helped him use the toilet. She wiped his body. She massaged his legs with palm kernel oil. She learned how to adjust the hospital bed and helped the nurses when they were too busy. One afternoon, a nurse asked her, "Madam, how do you do it? After all this man did to you?" Ifunanya smiled faintly. "I'm not doing it for who he was. I'm doing it for who I still hope he can become." Gozi heard that from his bed. And it sank in deep. Back at home, their children missed her. She came home late, cooked quickly, helped with homework, then returned to the hospital. No complaints. No drama. Just a woman carrying weight that was never meant for one person alone. One evening, as she fed Gozi ogbono soup, he looked at her hands, scarred from carrying hot pots and scrubbing floors. He blinked hard. "Ife," he said, voice low, "I don't deserve this love. I treated you like nothing." She looked him in the eyes and whispered, "You're right. You didn't." Then she stood up and quietly packed the flask. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just left him with the truth and silence. That night, alone in the hospital ward, Gozi stared at the ceiling and thought about how foolish he had been. He traded a solid woman for a pretty face that vanished at the first sign of struggle. By the time Gozi was discharged and returned to the apartment in Enugu's GRA, he was using a walking stick and couldn't climb stairs without help. Ifunanya had already arranged the downstairs room to be his temporary space. She placed his clothes in reachable drawers. Everything he needed was right there. But what he needed most, her love, wasn't. She spoke to him only when necessary. "Your lunch is on the table. Your drugs are in the tray." That was it. Gozi noticed that her old wrappers had been replaced with new fitted gowns. She wore soft makeup now. She had also lost so much weight in a beautiful and healthy way, and started going out often, sometimes alone, sometimes with the kids. He asked her once, "Where are you going?" She looked at him without blinking. "To continue the life I pause for you." That sentence crushed him. He started therapy, more out of guilt than health. He even returned to church for the first time in years. The pastor preached about restoration, and Ngozi cried through the entire service. He stood up during testimony and said, "I mocked my wife. I chased another woman. I broke my own home. And now God has broken me to rebuild me." People clapped. Some wept. But at home, Ifunanya wasn't impressed by his words anymore. She'd seen enough words. She needed actions. One evening, she returned from the salon and saw him struggling to cook noodles. "Let me help," she said calmly. "No," he replied. "I should have done this years ago." She stood there, watching the man who once called her fat elephant trying to balance a pot with shaky hands and boiling regret. "Why didn't you ever leave me, Ife? I still can't believe you stayed back despite how I treated you badly," he said without turning. "Because I didn't want to teach my daughter that walking away is the only answer. I wanted her to see that healing is possible too, but with boundaries." It was then Ngozi knew, forgiveness might come, but love, that had to be earned again, slowly, painfully, step by step. It was a calm Sunday afternoon in Enugu, the kind where the streets were quiet and the air smelled of roasted corn and rain. Ngozi sat on the balcony in a clean polo shirt and joggers, his walking stick now leaning uselessly by the door. He was getting stronger, physically. But his heart still limped. Inside, Ifunanya was ironing the kids' school uniforms. She had just returned from a women's conference where she spoke on a panel titled "Healing from Inside the Fire." People clapped. They saw her strength. But at home, Ngozi only saw the distance between them, like a wound healing but still sore to the touch. Later that evening, he knocked on her bedroom door. She opened it, surprised. He hadn't entered that room since the accident. "I want to talk," he said, voice low. "Not to beg. Just to thank you for staying." She nodded and stepped aside. He walked in and looked around, her perfume bottles, her journals, a half-folded wrapper on the bed. Then his eyes landed on the small ceramic bowl by the mirror. Inside it was her wedding ring. "Ife," he began, "I used to think being a man was about control. Power. Having options. But lying in that hospital bed, forgotten by everyone but you, taught me something. You were my home, and I burned it down." She stood quietly. "I know I broke your heart," he continued, "but I'm willing to spend the rest of my life fixing every crack. Even if you never put that ring back on." Ifunanya walked to the bowl. Picked up the ring. Held it between her fingers. "I never threw it away," she said softly. "Not because I was still wearing it, but because I was waiting to see if the man I married would come back. Not the one with money or power, but the one with humility." Ngozi knelt down. Not to propose, but to apologize. She didn't say yes. She didn't say no. But she reached for his hand, and placed the ring in his palm. "Let's see if there will be need for me to wear it again." 1 year later, life in Enugu had settled into a quieter rhythm. The noise that once filled Ngozi's life, status, ego, and false laughter, had been replaced with something softer, peace. Ifunanya now ran her own tailoring business in New Haven. Her designs were worn by local celebrities and church leaders. She trained 6 apprentices, and her name, Madam Ife, became a symbol of strength, not sorrow. But even with her success, she returned home each night with the same calm dignity. The house no longer felt cold. Ngozi, now fully recovered, had resigned from his bank job. He took up a quieter role managing small business loans for women-led startups. It paid less, but it fed his soul more. At every workshop, every seminar, he told a story, not just about finance, but about respect, regret, and rebuilding trust. One evening, the family gathered for dinner. The children laughed loudly over spilled juice and oversalted rice. Ngozi served Ifunanya her portion before anyone else. She didn't flinch this time. She smiled. That simple smile felt like a sunrise after a long, stormy night. After the kids went to bed, they sat on the balcony, the city lights twinkling beneath them like fallen stars. Ngozi reached into his pocket and pulled out her wedding ring. The one she had asked him to keep months ago. He held it out. "Ife," he said, "I don't just want to be your husband again. I want to be your friend, your listener, your safe place. No show, no lies. Just me. The man who finally understands." She looked at the ring, then at him. Slowly, she took it and slid it onto her own finger. Not because everything was perfect, but because they had grown into something stronger than perfect, honest. "I forgive you, Ngozi," she said. "And I love who you're becoming." They sat there, hands intertwined, listening to the city hum below and the quiet peace within. That night, there were no apologies. No speeches. Just two people who had gone through the fire, and came out holding hands. Moral of the story: when pride makes you mock the one who holds your heart, life has a way of showing you who truly stays when the lights go out. Don't wait for loss to teach you the value of loyalty and love. If this story touched your heart, click subscribe for more real-life African stories that remind us that even broken things can bloom again. Thank you for staying with us to the end.